Happy Friday, everybody,
Happy Friday.
and welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other host.
And today we have joining us all the way from Boston area of Massachusetts, Mark Erelli.
How you doing?
Woo!
Yes, Friday, Mark
Yes,
Erelli. It's
we
all
are
happening.
excited today.
Yes. And Wiley, right on time at the party. Happy Friday. He says,
Fresh
"I've
margarita.
fresh margarita." Wow.
Love it.
Alan is having real Friday happy hour problems. Or he said,
See,
if I can find some passion fruit, he said, making hurricanes.
oh my goodness.
Well, good luck on your search, Alan. Just make sure to take us with you on your search. And looks like Chris is enjoying award-winning Udapills beer from.
Nice.
So yay! Congratulations to local brewery Udapills from the Twin Cities. Connie joining us
Hey,
from
Connie.
Richfield. And Craig, of course, I have to leave the house right now. Oh, sad face. But yes, you can catch back catalog later on YouTube. But for all of you who can stay for the party, we're going to have lots of fun,
They're
and
already
we will
having
answer.
fun here.
I know exactly. We'll answer all your questions as we can. And again, this is our weekly happy hour where we invite different guests on to revisit their old records and talk about them with us. And it's a bit of a happy hour for us. So, it finally being warm out and me feeling the summery vibes, I stayed away from the dark beer today and I made myself a gin and tonic. So,
Hey, all right.
so that's what I'm drinking today. Tony, what are you enjoying?
Well, in honor of our friend Chris and the award-winning Udapills Brewery, I am going with an Udapills
Nice.
Ewald the Golden, one of their Hefeweizen European style. It's so delicious.
Nice. And Mark, are you enjoying any kind of beverage on your Friday afternoon?
I've got all the angles covered here. I've got a seltzer, just a plain seltzer, and then I've also got a nice light lager from the Von Trapp Brewing Company up in Vermont.
Nice. Well,
Excellent.
well, cheers to everyone out there.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in and joining the
Cheers.
party today. And it looks like, oh yeah, past guest Becky Schlegel's on as well, joining us from Pine Island,
Hey, Becky and
and
Heath.
yeah, and Lynn joining us from South Carolina with a Pinot Grigio. Sounds good to me.
I think it's Friday, officially
I think it's
Friday
Friday.
now.
I
We
think
have
it really is, and
crossed the threshold.
folks are ready for the weekend. And here in Minnesota, it's not obviously it's Mother's Day weekend everywhere. So happy Mother's Day. But also here in Minnesota, it's also the fishing opener. So lots of activity here
Oh,
in
wow.
Minnesota. So we're happy to have all of you join us today. And we're excited to dig into the music with Mark. And Mark has been on our list for quite some time. I don't remember the first time I reached out to you, Mark, but it's been a while. We've been trying to get you on the show. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
And the album that you picked to talk about today came out in 2002, and we're going to dig into that in a little bit. But for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with your music, they might be more familiar with you than they think they are, because in addition to your own vast discography, you've also played on lots of people's records, toured with people, a lot of artists that people have heard of. But why don't you give the brief 2-minute bio, your origin story, if you will, of where you grew up and how you fell into making the music you make.
Sure, yeah. I grew up actually in a suburb of Boston, about 7 miles away from where I'm sitting now. Um, in between that, I went to college in Maine and then landed out in Western Massachusetts after college for graduate school, where I attended UMass for their evolutionary biology program, of all things. And while I was grinding my way through my master's in evolutionary biology, I was doing all the music I possibly could. And in the process of that, I ended up signing with Western Mass independent label Signature Sounds. And my debut came out on Signature Sounds, a self-titled debut in '99. I defended in April of '99, and I defended my thesis in May of
Oh
'99.
goodness.
Big
And
year. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then I was off and running. And I put two records out on Signature Sounds. They were where I was like signed to the label, and they paid for everything, and kind of your more standard record deal sort of thing. Critically, both records very well received. Commercially, not really like lighting the world on fire. And after the two record deal was done, I was kind of free to do whatever I want. And Signature was very great too, just letting me do what I wanted. But I was really free and was trying to figure out the next move, and that's where today's record came in. And this was my third record that I recorded on my own, and then it ended up being licensed to Signature Sounds like the previous two.
Excellent. Wonderful. And the album is called the Memorial Hall Recordings. And we're going to dig in a little bit more into the backstory of this album. But is there anything you want to say about it before we play the first song?
Yeah, well, true to its title, it was recorded in, there are many memorial halls, but for this one, the one in Munson, Massachusetts, where they gave us the keys for a week to set up in an empty, beautiful old Civil War Memorial Hall. There it is. That will always be the Memorial Hall in my heart. So, yeah.
And I can't believe they just gave keys to a bunch of musicians. By the way,
it's still amazing. The kind of deal was greased by a guy named Bruce McKay who lived near there. So he wasn't a total unknown, but actually knowing Bruce, and I love him to death, but I still can't believe they gave us the keys. They gave Bruce the keys to give to us.
Well, I can't wait to hear what came out of this. The Memorial Hall Recordings came out in 2002, and the first track that you picked to feature from this record is Call You Home. Is there anything you want to say about this song specifically?
Yeah, this is the lead-off track for the record, and it kind of sets the tone. There's a lot of showcasing songs written by other New England songwriters and traditional songs associated with New England. But this is one of the handful of originals that I wrote to kind of slot in with the other kind of New England themed covers. And this was written, I started this, I think, at Folk Alliance one year. And it was inspired by the imagery, getting more serious about the imagery in my songs, a la Dave Carter, who I had befriended not long before that. And I thought, I gotta up my game a little bit here. So this was the start of that.
Fantastic. Let's give it a listen. This is Mark Erelli, Call You Home, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
There are 7 sisters weeping down by the old oxbow as the coffee-colored river starts to swell with melting snow. Soon a bittersweet new season will turn the gray to green again, and I'll have to find a way to say goodbye to you, my friend. I'm gonna miss you, this I know, though I'll be just another memory when I go. Will you forgive me all my sins and gather me back in like the prodigal son, no more to roam? Will you let me once again call you home? The sky is open like a chalice all along the river road, where the patchwork field tobacco barns shiver in the cold. And I could drink it in for hours and never take my fill. I tell myself that I'll forget, but I know I never will. But I'm gonna miss you, this I know, though I'll be just another memory when I go. Will you forgive me all my sins and gather me back in like the prodigal son, no more to roam? Will you let me once again call you home? The wild birds take their passage across the vernal sky, like an arrow loosed from God's own bow, so swift and true they fly. Lord, draw me from your quiver and take away my tears. Shoot me o'er the seven sisters, somewhere far away from here. But I'm gonna miss you, this I know. Though I'll be just another memory when I go. Will you forgive me all my sins and gather me back in, like the prodigal son no more alone? Will you let me once again call you home? Well, I call you home. I'll always call you home.
All right. Mark Erelli with Call You Home from his 2002 release, The Memorial Hall Recordings. Don't want to forget the the. And we were talking about this before I came on, Mark, that there was much discussion about whether you included that in the title. So what went into the thinking of whether the was going to land?
I think there was just a lot of discussion about pretty much every aspect of this project, and the just seemed to be like more official. And it's the only record I know of that was recorded in this setting, so it is the Memorial Hall Recordings.
Yeah.
It's not a Memorial Hall recording. But yeah, this was, this comes at an interesting time in my career, kind of looking back. Those first two records were kind of rootsy, folky, rocky, singer-songwriter kind of records. And I was young. I was 24 when my first record came out, and I was 26 when the second one came out. And I didn't have like a lot of life under my belt up to that point. I mean, I had a master's degree, but like that, nobody in Americana that didn't really resonate with anybody, So there wasn't like a backstory, I hadn't like overcome an addiction or anything like that. So I just remember like the story being like, oh, here's this kid with some like good songs and a good voice. And, it's like, that's not a huge hook, right? It seems like you need more. Oh, there he is. Yeah.
There's that kid. I wanted everybody to see the kid.
But he's so happy.
I was so happy making this record. I was. So, I think Lauren Entrust, my producer who had worked on my previous two records and on this one with me, I think we were really looking for a story, and not a manufactured story, but one that kind of dovetailed with all the things that we loved about music. Both of us love New England, or from New England. We love New England history, and we're big fans of New England artists. And so, at the time, Americana was like this emerging genre. It wasn't like the thing that it is today. And today there's like a push to have it be, a little bit more diverse and more inclusive and to widen the tent a little bit. But back then it was like Southern and Texan, and there wasn't a lot of, if you were an Americana artist, like Slade Cleaves had a huge thing with his Broke Down record on Americana radio, but he had to go to Texas to do it. He's from Maine, but he had to go to Texas and work with a Texas producer, and that, so it didn't seem like there was really a big voice for New England in the Americana community. So we just wanted to, kill a bunch of birds with one stone. We wanted to come up with a cool story for a project. We wanted to celebrate New England music and musicians and songs, and we wanted to kind of provide proof of concept in our own way that like New England is valid geography for American roots music, the same as the American South or Texas or wherever. And so, we gathered a bunch of songs from some of our favorite New England songwriters and some traditional songs that had some connections to New England, and some originals that were, in some cases heavily inspired by New England landscape. In other cases, they were kind of just more like fun sort of like palate cleansers. And we all went to this Civil War Memorial Hall in Munson, Massachusetts, this tiny little town. And they literally gave us the keys to this place for a week. And this place, it used to be the town bank. It used to be after the Civil War veterans were done with it, all the town meetings were there. There was a jail cell in the basement. And we just had the run of the place. There was nobody else in there but us. And the band set up on the stage in a semicircle. And we played without headphones. We played completely live. And, I joke that it's a live record, just there's no audience. And we mic'd the hall because we wanted in a normal recording studio, you're always trying to control for the environment, right? You're trying to limit or minimize the environment. In this case, we really wanted this New England environment to kind of seep into the music and be, audibly, physically present. And I definitely feel that it is when I listen to this record. So, there was quite a bit of thought that went into this, and just a lot of care and a lot of love. And there was nobody asking for this at the time. In fact, we recorded this in May of 2001, and Compass and Companion, my second record, had come out I believe either the month before or the month after. So we had recorded this before the second record was even really out.
Wow.
Because we just had the time and we had the idea and we were excited, and everybody just kind of did it on spec, and we were like, when the record comes out, we will, you're going to get paid. And everyone said yes. I couldn't believe it. I can say that now. I haven't said that in 22 years. But, those guys, I don't think they would want that getting out earlier than this. But it seems like the statute of limitations has passed.
It has.
Yeah.
Well, you go ahead, Ellen.
I was just going to say that I love that you recorded it in this space, and so many places in New England have these town halls. They're not always as majestic as the one where you recorded, but there's at least the one church meeting house where it served all the functions. And I love that there was a jail cell. And I want to know, did anyone ever get a timeout in the jail cell during recording? Maybe the drummer. Usually it's the drummer. I don't know.
Well, the drummer was the producer, so he had a get out of jail free card. But I think we recorded some of a music video in there. That was the other thing about this project. It was kind of almost too ahead of its time. We filmed the whole thing. There was a film crew there. It actually became part of this documentary special that was picked up on a bunch of PBS stations across the country. And so it was incredibly well documented, and also just kind of very unique in terms of the setting. And I didn't really know of another record like it at the time. No one was going to their cabin in the woods to record their breakup record, stuff like that. The recording technology really wasn't there yet. We had a fantastic engineer from out here in Boston by the name of Chris Rival came out, brought all his gear. He went out to the hall and measured where he was going to be to where we were going to be, and then cut and made all of his mic cables specially for this event, so they wouldn't be any longer than they had to be. There wouldn't be any less. This is the kind of thing that you had to do in 2000. Now I recorded a whole record in this room right here, with two channels.
Yeah.
But back then it was a much more involved process to do on location recording like this. And there might have been other, the Stones went to that mansion in France or whatever, but that was the Stones. I didn't know any artists at my level that had done this kind of involved remote recording before, so it felt a little bit unique and maybe a little bit before its time in terms of the depth of the story there.
Well, and I want to follow up on the kind of the timing of it too, because I was just kind of getting into acoustic music myself around this time, and there was a clear change, at least in the U.S., before and after "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" came out in 2001, and if this was recorded before that, like it just wasn't as much part of the cultural zeitgeist, like of mandolins. Hearing a mandolin on this, like that, I mean, that wasn't something that you were going to hear on mainstream radio for sure. And a lot of things changed after that, and I'm just curious if you were kind of swept away. Did you benefit from that kind of change in kind of cultural tastes as, kind of bluegrass and folk and some of that early stuff got a little bit of a resurgence after that?
Well, I mean, I mentioned that the first two records were, critically well received, but they weren't like huge commercial successes. This also was very well received critically and also not a commercial success. So I wouldn't say I benefited from anything really. If anything, though, Brother Where Art Thou just felt like more Southern music kind of, which I love. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Southern music, but I am not Southern and I can't pass for that and I would never try. So, I kind of felt like I had this identity that I was born with, and I had to figure out a way to use it and to make it, the natural part of my story and the natural part of my music that it actually was, and to not hide it, but to celebrate it. And so, this was my attempt at that. And all these years later, 22 years later, it still rings pretty true when I listen back. I listen to much of the record today again, and I still get kind of swept up in the excitement and the soul that was in all of the musicians playing, and that was in the building itself. And I get kind of swept up in the fun that we had too. That was the other thing. We wanted to have fun. When you're in a recording studio, you're on the clock. You're separated, usually in different rooms. It's there's a lot of pressure, and I've got a lot of experience doing that now, but at the time I didn't. And so we wanted to get out of the studio and just we hung out every day from like 10 to 9 at night, and we ate together. We took breaks while the DPW was sawing fire hydrants in half together. There's all sorts of crazy things that happened. But we had so much fun, and we even included some of those laughter and those jokes in kind of little interstitial bits on the record, just so that the whole concept, it didn't really feel like we were seriously making a concept record, when we were doing it. We put a lot of thought in advance, but then when we did it, it was just a blast,
Yeah. Yeah, well, that definitely comes through on this record, and I can't wait to dig into more tracks with you, Mark. If you just joined us on the Back Catalog Listening Party, Mark Erelli is joining us from the Boston area, talking about his New England-inspired album recorded at the Memorial Hall in Munson, Massachusetts. And the next track that you picked to feature on today's show is What's Changed? And I'm not going to ask you that question because so much has changed since 2002 in so many ways. But is there anything you want to say about the song, though, before we take a listen?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good example of what happens several times throughout the record, where there's tracks and musical styles and song choices that kind of presage or foretell things that I would go on to do later in my career. That might have seemed like non sequiturs at the time. This is a perfect example. It's kind of a Western swing kind of feeling song, and I remember, it probably felt a little bit out of left field at the time, but then the record after this, I made an entire record of Western swing songs. So, it kind of was a little hint of what was yet to come.
Excellent. Let's give it a spin, says Mark Erelli. What's changed here on the Back Catalog Listening Party?
Darling, when we met, you said I was the one. And I never thought the knot we tied would come undone. But lately you've been acting kinda strange. What's changed? What's changed? Not so long ago you couldn't get enough. And I still got all of those bad habits that you used to love. Yes, as far as I can tell, I'm still the same. So what's changed? What's changed? You're getting over me far too easily. We had a love so strong, but now I look into your eyes and find that you've already gone. Well, I spent my whole life falling in and out of love, and I swore this time I wasn't gonna get up. There's a reason why you're leaving, please explain. What's changed? What's changed? Now what's changed, baby? You're getting over me far too easily. We had a love so strong, but now I look into your eyes and find that you've already gone. Darling, if you're really gonna say goodbye, there ain't nothing I can do or say to change your mind. Just one piece of information in exchange. What's changed? What's changed? What's changed? Oh, baby, what's changed?
Mark Erelli, yeah. I hear
know
the
this was
cheers.
recorded live, and I after I heard each song, I was just waiting for the applause because man, that had some
Yeah.
great energy in there.
And folks are loving it. Alan, I think you might have gotten a gig in Texas. Alan says, I was going to say, I could totally see you at the dance hall there.
Yeah.
And he says, you have a place to stay if you get back there. So one Texan wants the New England style of Western swing in his
love it.
hometown. So, and Michael says, I got to work on the post and editing of the
yeah.
documentary video for this album. That's
Hey,
so
Michael.
cool.
Yeah, I remember Michael very well. Yep. I know it's over 20 years. Crazy.
Documentary. Is that available somewhere we can point people?
It's not. It never was commercially available. I never made I'm even dating myself to say I never made a DVD of it. I did. There was some kind of multimedia kind of CD-ROM stuff. Again, I'm very dating myself on the actual CD itself. If you put it in your computer. But I have some copies that I've kind of given out over the years as like fundraising premiums and stuff. But yeah, it's not available anywhere else. I kind of love that actually. I kind of like that it's like there's things that you just can't have.
In this day and age.
Well,
Yeah.
I will say there aren't any physical copies of this album anymore, but if you want to get the high-res digital files, which I highly recommend,
Yeah.
because if you're listening to the show, on your computer or your phone, you're not hearing the full quality of how good these songs sound recorded live. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing when you say that because it just sounds so good, and the balance, the mix, everything sounds so
And like
clean.
Mark mentioned, the space, like you can hear the hall. You can hear, it's like another member of the band,
Yes.
and it
The
sounds
ghost.
so good together.
Well, speaking of the band, I can't believe we've gotten halfway through here without me mentioning. Of course, we mentioned Lauren Entris, who played drums and pump organ and several other kind of weird old instruments. But the band on this record was just off the hook. That's Jim Henry in the middle there on that picture on mandolin and dobro and acoustic guitar. Over on the far right there, we had Sonny Barbado on the accordion and the Wurlitzer. And I love the accordion flavor on this record.
Yes. I
Again-
wrote it down for both songs in big
I know.
caps. Accordion.
Yeah, I mean, he's an amazing player. And again, there is a history of accordion and Western swing and country music, but I wasn't hearing a lot of it, at the time we made this record. So again, that was another aspect of it that felt very special and very unique. For some reason, I don't see Jim Lamond, our bass player, in that picture, but Jim, I don't know where he was when we made that picture, but Jim Lamond played bass, a wonderful bass player, had kind of worked with Susan Tedeschi before kind of working more with me. And then Kevin Barry over there on the left playing... oh, there's Jim. There he is. Over on the far left, that's Jim Lamond, and then Kevin Barry right next to him on electric guitar. And he was just playing the heck out of it on that last song.
Oh my God!
Yes.
I was gonna mention that too. He sure was.
Yeah.
Oh, Kevin's amazing, and the fact that this was played live without headphones, I'm very proud of that. It's not just because like we were good enough to do it, but because there's things that you can only get that way that you can't manufacture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that all music has to be made that way. I've made records that aren't that way. But when you do choose to work without a net like that, it does kind of bring something out in you. And it was a little bit stressful, just hoping my voice was going to hold up for the whole week. But, it all worked out great, amazingly.
And if the name Kevin Barry sounds as familiar as Mark Erelli's, it might be because it's not the first time these names have come up on the show. A few weeks back when Chris Delmhorst was on, both Kevin Barry and Mark Erelli played guitars on her record. So it's kind of wonderful that Kevin Barry's made another appearance. And actually, Wiley was curious he was asking if you're I'm guessing he means a fan of Asleep at the Wheel, and then Alan chimes in with Asleep at the Wheel is at the dance hall next week after next. So what were kind of your musical influences heading into either this project or in general growing up? Like, what do you feel like molded you?
For this project, as I was saying before, we were really focusing more on New England music, and so there is New England country music here. Guys like John Lincoln Wright, who were really big in the country scene here back in the day, and of course there's a big bluegrass scene. There's also a lot of independent bands out in Western Mass where I was living at the time. Guys like the Lonesome Brothers, who's one of whose songs I covered on this record, and then people like Tim Guerin and Mike Donalo, who were kind of more in the bluesier vein in Boston, but they had written this beautiful country soul ballad called Fine Time of Year that we do here. So, I was really focusing on the New England stuff, but right after this record, I would dive deep into Western swing, and of course, you don't have to go very deep into Western swing to get to Sleep at the Wheel. But Hank Thompson was a big favorite of mine in the Western swing department. I would say my favorite. That's probably maybe a little sacrilegious with the whole Bob Wills thing, but Hank Thompson just had an amazing voice. His recording sounded just fantastic, and the playing and the singing was top notch. But up to this project, it would have been a lot of like New England singer-songwriters or kind of folky singer-songwriters that passed through New England, people like Greg Brown and Patty Larkin and Bill Morrissey. And then some of the more kind of rockin' singer-songwriters like your Steve Earles and John Hyatts and Buddy Millers and then the Sean Colvins. I'm saying all dudes, but Sean Colvin, Patty Griffin, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny you talk so much about the New England stuff because I'm a native New Englander from New Haven, and I think the first time I saw you was in '98 New Year's, opening up for Salamander. I think it was Salamander Crossing's last show, Ronnie Arbo's first band. And I think that was before your record came out, right?
It was, yeah. And I remember making a joke on stage that night about how like, if the guitar player ever had an accident, like I would love to join the band. And they were freaking out because they had decided to break up at that point, but they hadn't told anyone. And I was like, stepped right in it without realizing it.
Man. But I was just thinking about what a fertile time it was because I was there for first night in Northampton, where it was a big New Year's
Hmm.
celebration with all these bands that I was already big fans of, and I just think like at that time in Western Mass, as you mentioned, like I don't know if Dave Carter was already living in Western Mass at the time or if he was still in Portland, but
No.
like there were so many great musicians that were happening right there, and it feels like you could just step out your door and you'd run into one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a huge scene out there, and you know, how do I say this delicately? I was the kid, and I didn't have history with anyone other than just being fans, right? I hadn't dated any of them. It's a small scene out there, so there was a lot of entanglement, shall we say? But
Very
I was
politics.
just like the new kid in town, and I was just a fan and a friend of all these people. So I would see, like, the Neils and Cliff Eberhard and Martin Sexton, and I missed Dar had already moved on by the time I was there, but the Lonesome Brother. I mean, there were just all these fantastic bands and singer-songwriters out there. It was a really great time.
Excellent. Well, we want to hear more of this record and hear how New England has shaped your music. So the next track you picked from this album, the Memorial Hall Recordings, is The Drinking Gourd. Is there anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a traditional song. It's a song. I guess it's kind of more of a spiritual song. It's a song about the Underground Railroad, which, of course, we had many stops along the Underground Railroad here in New England. And, we were in a Civil War memorial hall, designed to kind of honor the men from the area that had fought in the Civil War. And so we felt like it would be, great to do some songs that kind of, paid an homage to that era of history. And so The Drinking Gourd was a really natural choice. I kind of remember coming up with this arrangement. I'd heard Buddy Miller do a traditional song, Buddy and Julie Miller, and I thought, like, well, how could we like rock this up a little bit? And so that's where my take on The Drinking Gourd came from.
All right, let's give it a listen. This is Mark Erelli with The Drinking Gourd here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
The sun goes back and the first quail calls, follow the drinking gourd. The old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom, to follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. For the old man is waiting for to carry you. Follow the drinking gourd. River bed makes a mighty fine road. The dead trees will show you the way, and it's left foot, peg foot, traveling on. Follow the drinking gourd. The river ends between two hills. Follow the drinking gourd. There's another river on the other side. Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. For the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. Hey, yeah, yeah. I thought I heard the angel say, follow gold. The stars in the heavens gonna show you the way. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. For the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. For the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gold. Hey!
Yeah. Mark Erelli with the drinking gourd. Nice take on that old African American spiritual. And man, Jim Henry going to town on the Mando on that tune.
Yeah. What a great
So-
what a great track. That, I mean, that was a real, you know, when you're recording live, it's all about capturing moments, right? It's like trying to bottle the lightning a little bit. And there were just so many. I mean, I forget how many songs are on the record. It's like, what, 14 or something? Yeah, 14 moments like that where it's like everybody was on, you know? And the feel of that track in particular is just that kind of thump of the drum at the beginning. You can really hear it in the room, you know? It's you can hear it kind of go out to the back wall and come back. I mean, these old halls, they were built before amplified music, right? So those halls you had to be able to stand on the stage and orate and talk and have people out in the hall hear you. Mm-hmm. And if you stand out on the edge of that stage and you sing, it sounds perfect. There's not anything you have to do, you know? And Munson isn't this like fancy town. It's this tiny little town in the middle of, you know, Massachusetts, right on the Connecticut border. It's not a particularly affluent town, but these buildings were all built that way. I have one literally right on the other side of my block here in Melrose, where I live now. So yeah, those, you know, when you get good musicians in a room like that, kind of playing with the room, the musicians kind of become, the room kind of becomes a fifth Beatle, is what I'm trying to say. You know?
Did you have to treat the space at all? I'm just curious. Sometimes those can be kind of reverberant spaces. Did you have to do anything to tone it down?
No, there really wasn't anything to be done to it. It was too big. But we set up on the stage, and we set up on the back of the stage, you know, kind of towards the, you know, kind of upstage towards the curtain. So that kind of helped. And then if something needed a little bit more space, we would kind of move it out towards the edge of the stage, the front of the stage. Yeah.
The old-fashioned way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just want to point out that Mark said there's 14 tracks, and, you know, we might only have time to play 4. So I just want to point out that you're going to want to hear this whole record, because this is just like a taste of what is a pretty amazing record. I have a CD copy somewhere in my house, and I remember listening to it when I first got it and playing it on repeat. So I know how good it is. And you can get the high-res files through Bandcamp, or you can get there through markerelli.com. You can explore Mark's wide discography, including this album that came out in 2002, as well as, Mark, you have a new record you just put out as well.
Yeah, I just put a record out in February called "Lay Your Darkness Down." I think it's my 13th. I think it's my 13th. It depends on how you count, but yeah, the new record is in very much the kind of antithesis of the Memorial Hall recordings, you know, where this one was an ensemble, the new record was just me, and where the Memorial Hall was recorded in this beautiful live old hall, the new one was recorded in the room that I'm in now, which is tiny and very dead. So, you know, both valid ways to record, and you're going to end up you're going to end up with a different record, which is, of course, the whole goal, you know, to not do the same thing you've already done. So yeah, the new one just came out. I'm very proud of it. And at the same time, it's just really nice that anyone would care to hear me talk about something that I did once 22 years ago. It's kind
We
of
care, Mark.
We're all about it here on the Back
Yeah.
Catalog Listening Party.
The
And
album format. I mean, it's a
good.
snapshot in your life as an artist, and it's a moment in time with you and these individuals on stage, and it's very special.
Yeah, I'm an album guy. I understand that maybe a lot of the way that we consume music now has probably moved on from that, but I have not. I mean, people are free to slice up my records any way they want, but I'm always making, conceiving of them and making them as records.
Yeah.
That's just how I think.
Well, we approve of that. And I would say to all of you out there, if you like what you hear, again, buy all the tracks, buy all the albums. They're really great. And you can also check out his tour dates. And if you have questions for Mark, we don't have a ton of time left. We'll have time for at least one more song here. But feel free to throw in your comments, questions for Mark, so we can get to them before the end of today's show. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank the people that keep this show going and have done so for 161 episodes, if I'm correct. And this is our Patreon community. These are the folks who said, even we started this during the pandemic, even when people started playing live shows, people are like, no, we still want back catalog. So these are the folks that have kept the show going for the last 3 years. Penny, Anna, Linda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Ellen, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, and John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Court, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead, Pick and Paro, Severin, Lynn, Mary, Many Tracks, Nikki, Joni, David, Sarah C, CJ, and Wiley. Thank you all so much. And if you want to join our Patreon, you can do that. The link is scrolling on the bottom of the screen, and you can get first look at some of our upcoming guests, and we have some good ones. And Steve is saying he's really loving the songs and stories, and I agree. So let's get at least one more song in.
Maybe while we're on the Patreon thing, though, I do want to mention that Mark has a wonderful Patreon community too, and I feel like Patreon itself can be kind of a combination crossover. I think a lot of our listeners and Patreon supporters would really enjoy what Mark's doing over there. Mark, do you want to just mention briefly what you have to offer over at Patreon?
Yeah, sure. There's no, there's like price tiers or whatever, you call them, but everybody gets the same stuff. It's just whatever you can afford. There's no gated community within the Patreon community for me. And I do, 3 things consistently every month and then some extra things on top of that. I do a record recommendation where I write a review, a little essay about records that have been really important or, for me that I've really loved. I do a video series called The Stories Behind the Songs. And there's actually a video of the stories behind the Memorial Hall recordings. And then I do a track that you can't find anywhere else that is just me playing all the instruments, again, recorded right here in this room. And, some of those went on to become my newest record, and I've just kept that going. Somehow I've kept that going every month. We'll see how long I keep that up. But,
nice.
Yeah.
Well, you can learn more at patreon.com/Mark Erelli. We'll put that in the comments and in the show notes at backcataloglisteningparty.com.
That's right. And it's a great way of supporting Mark, in addition to buying the records and throwing something in that Venmo tip jar as well. So I want to make sure we get at least one more song before the end of today's show. So the next track you chose is Dear Magnolia. Is there anything you want to say before we take a listen?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We just got this amazing comment from Gretchen Neggers, who was the town manager, I think.
Oh, wow.
At Munson. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
For those who are just listening, Gretchen says, I gave the keys to Bruce, and he did a great job buffering you all from the prying eyes of government. Made me a lifelong fan, and the Memorial Hall still stands and still holds the same spirits.
Oh, that's lovely.
Man. We got to come back there at the 25-year anniversary and do another show.
Yeah.
I haven't talked with Gretchen in years, but great to see her here. Dear Magnolia is a song that was written by this wonderful group called Rust Farm, which was primarily Chris Moore and John McGann. John McGann was an incredible. They're both amazing players, but John was an incredibly gifted string player. Could play anything, and he is no longer with us. He passed away some years ago. Just a really sweet guy, and Chris is just an amazing songwriter. This record owed a lot to the sound and the feel of the band. You know, this is kind of like there's a lot of parallels between this and the Basement Tapes. And this song, a lot of times people think this song is a cover of a band song that they never heard, but in fact it is a song by a New England group named Rust Farm.
All right, let's give it a listen. This is Dear Magnolia from Mark Erelli here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Magnolia, I'll lend you my ear, whisper your stories and secrets hidden here, of a South that rose, of a South that fell, your days of glory, your days of hell, we'll weave together. Praise to the Lord. Raise up our voices and lay down our swords to the souls we've lost, to the souls we've found. Though they never stop asking us, did you really have to take us down? Heavy-headed blossoms, fragrant as they fall. I have wandered through the door of everything you stand for. Heavy-headed blossoms gracefully reveal that which I had always felt was missing, like the rolling jeans of a wagonless wheel. Your sweet survival is given right unto your wisdom, and yet you realize, though your arms are long and your reach is wide, within your deepest scars there are some snakes still hiding. So dear Magnolia, I pledge my return to the hills between us on which fires still burn. There will stand our ground till the moon above comes shining through the smoke in the name of love. Heavy-headed blossoms, fragrant as they fall. Well, I have wandered through the door of everything you stand for. Heavy-headed blossoms gracefully reveal that which I had always felt was missing, like the rolling jeans of a wagonless wheel.
shed some light on the subject.
Where'd you get that thing? From your
Bought
kids?
it. Bought it with my own money.
Okay, there we go.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
I can relate, man. It is a good feeling, you're right.
Oh man. All right. Summer night.
Nice.
All right. That's so good. I love too that that when you are talking, when the band members are talking, you can hear the echo of the room. You can hear
Yeah.
that the
Oh, yeah.
natural reverb happening. Yeah.
Yeah, you can also hear me trying to like start the next take, and they're just having none of it. They're like, yeah. We'll do that as soon as we're done having fun here.
You're clearly having a good time. And
Yeah, man.
You can
It's
hear
great.
that on there. I love that you left those bits and pieces on there as well.
Yeah, someone was asking me earlier today on social media somewhere, I guess, if there were outtakes of songs that didn't make this record, and there really aren't. There's not a ton. There might be one thing, but there's a lot of outtakes of conversations. It's not all of it compelling or appropriate, but it's on a tape somewhere.
Well, I think that really ties into the live feel of the album, and for folks who are listening for these things, when people are having a conversation in real time, there's a different energy, and you can really hear this on this record. So, one more time before we leave, I want to tell everybody to head on over to markerelli.com, pick up the high-res version through his Bandcamp links, and you'll hear this for yourself. It's really something special.
It really is.
Yeah, I think too, just in closing, I think this record is how I imagine a lot of civilians think that musicians spend our time. We just spend it hanging out, making music, enjoying, like inspiring spaces and each other's company and laughing and stuff. And it's not, as you both know, it's not really always like that at all. There's moments of that for sure. But this record really was like that. It really was just such a pleasure, and it felt like it was just something that we were doing for ourselves. And again, no one was clamoring for it, and we just went ahead and did it. And we figured, if we built it, they would eventually come around, and they eventually did. But it took a while. But I've never regretted it. It's one of my favorite records.
Oh, wonderful.
We so appreciate you sharing it with us today, Mark. Thank you
That's
so
my
much.
pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
For sure. And Becky Schlegel, hi, Becky, says, loved hearing your music. And Connie also thanking us for a wonderful show. And we want to thank Mark for spending this hour with us, because I would say not only have we wanted him on the show for a while, but again, this show doesn't happen without artists like Mark saying, yeah, I'll come and talk about one of my old records with you. And we really appreciate it. We also want to thank all of you for tuning in, because this is way more fun. We would listen to records no matter what.
Yeah.
But it's way more fun with you there engaging in the conversation and listening with us, because we can feel your energy when you're listening and commenting. It really makes it so much more special. And it looks like you got a new fan from Wiley. It's a great introduction to your music, Mark. Great listening party. And Chris thanks all of us and says it's a great show. Thank you for making it a great show, Mark, and spending that hour with us. It's such a treat. And we can't wait to maybe we'll have you back to visit one of your other many wonderful records.
I feel like we have a lot of opportunities. That's quite a discography, Mark. That's
Anytime, man. I would love to do it. Anytime. I'd love to come back.
Well,
Awesome.
and again, you can check out Mark's music at markerelli.com. You can check out his Patreon, buy his records, and if he's playing near you, definitely go check him out live. And if you like this episode, like it on YouTube, give it the thumbs up, point more bots to Mark Erelli. And also you can subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can be notified of what's coming up next week. And of course, our Patreon subscribers get first look at all of that stuff, as well as special invites to cool things. And this is the perfect way to kick off our holiday weekend. Thank you so much.
And it's, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And to Mother Banjo, she is celebrating her birthday this weekend. So on behalf of all of us in the Patreon community, a big happy birthday to Ellen.
Thank
for,
you. Oh, there you go.
We got our little Mother Banjo, Happy Birthday Banjo. We'll send you home on that. Thanks again to Mark. Thanks again to all of you for being out there supporting independent musicians. Until next week, we'll see you here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Cheers.